Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I apologize about the mix-up with the link. Not sure what happened there, but we'll strive to do better in the future. For those of you who haven't attended before, welcome to the March CoBUG presentation. It's a third installment in the series of BIM and concentrating on project parameters. And our presenter today is Beth Evanoo, and she is with OHM Advisors. And we'll get started here in a moment. Give some folks time to get logged on since there was a hiccup. Has anyone attended the BIM series before, our previous ones?
I have, Anne. Do you know how many had signed up for this one?
We had 19 last time I looked.
Yeah. Wondering if it's kind of like a school bus that's a few minutes late. The kids all say there's this mysterious rule at 10 minutes you're allowed to go home.
Well, there was a hiccup, I guess, with the link.
Yeah, the Eventbrite one that they sent was invalid, and then you had sent a separate one.
Yep, and I redid the Eventbrite one, and I've had several other people get on. Let me check my email and make sure I don't have some other folks I can send an email to. Nope, so far it seems to be working.
Everyone see my screen all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Cool. And you said you sent out another email?
Yeah, through Eventbrite. And it doesn't look like anyone's in the waiting room. So whenever you're ready to begin, Beth.
Okay. So what we want to look at today is parameters, and I'm going to start out with a little bit of a background on the parameters. I know that we're discussing project parameters today, but I wanted to make sure that you guys have a solid understanding of what that means and where that comes from. So way back in the definition of what a parameter is basically just information, and it's either defining or modifying an element, and usually it can be used in tags and schedules. The anatomy of a parameter in Revit specifically is about 8-fold. You've got the parameter type, which determines whether it's a project parameter, shared parameter, family parameter. And I'm going to go through each of these different 8 categories to explain what they mean and how you might define them or why you might define them. So parameter types are specifically in Revit are project parameters which live in a project, family parameters which live in a family, shared parameters which link the two, and global parameters which control parameters across a project and also live in projects. There is another type which are built-in parameters that you can't edit at all. You'll see this little built-in parameter information if you try to edit that. Usually you'll see that within a family, such as casework, width and depth and such are built-in parameters. You can't change the name of them or any of that stuff. Now, each of these types you can do certain things with, and that's why we're going over each of those types to explain what they are. Shared parameters we went over the last time, not the last meeting, but a couple before, and there's a video of that on our YouTube channel. Today we're going to go over project parameters and what you can do with those. And as a side note, we're going to make this presentation available after you can get the slides and go to all the links and use these as a reference later on. So if I'm going kind of fast, just know that it's you'll have these to reference later. So the name of a parameter, as long as it's not a built-in parameter, you can define this. And some of the best practices of that are limiting spaces, hopefully none at all, using an underscore to separate words, using as an alternate camel case, which is just capitalizing each letter of the first letter of each word. You want to go from least specific to most specific. So a door detail jam instead of door jam detail, because that would be mixing it up. If you want to, you can prefix all of your company parameters with your company name or an abbreviation so that you can easily tell which ones are company parameters and which ones are out of the box. And then you want to avoid anything that's a special character, especially math operations, because Revit will interpret those as a math operation, and you'll have to go through some special workarounds to make that work if you use those. And the goal of this is just to get everything that is like together. You want them to group together. And you also want it to be clear to users what you're going to be doing if you change this parameter. And you don't want it to be a sentence either. So short and clear and like parameters grouped together. And instance versus type. Instance very easily, very simply is just if you change one of them, only that one changes. Type is if you change the type, all of that type will change. The discipline will determine what type of parameters you can utilize. So under common, there are the things that you'll most likely use, your length, yes, no parameters, slope, angle, area, anything that's just might be used for any of the disciplines, that's where you'll find those. But there are a whole bunch of structural, HVAC, electrical, piping, energy. There's a ton of different types, but what shows up is a function of the discipline that you have selected. Grouping your parameters determines where they will show up to the user within the type properties or within the instance properties. Excuse me. these groups are hard-coded into Revit. You can't change them, you can't change the names, and you can't change the sorting of them. You can't change what order they show up in. It's a little odd the way that you might think the way that they are ordered. This is the way that Revit automatically does so, and you won't see all of these if there aren't parameters that exist under those categories. But if you put something under the other group, for instance, it'll always show up last. If you put something in the plumbing, it'll show up somewhere in the middle. So this will give you an idea of, okay, I know that I don't want users to see this parameter, for instance, to change it. Maybe it's controlled by formulas. Maybe you want to put it in the other category so that people just don't even notice it unless they're scrolling all the way to the bottom. And then your tooltip description, most people just skip right over this. It's not something that you have to put in. It's something that will show up as you hover over your parameter. It'll tell the user how to use that parameter perhaps, or what they need to put in there. It's useful if you have things across a company that you know you're going to be explaining over and over again. This is what this means. This is how to use it. You can put that information in, but note it is limited to 250 characters. Then the last thing is categories, and you'll only find this with your project parameters. It's an extra category, an extra definition that you get to add to project parameters that you don't have for others, because usually you're adding the others to specific families which already have a category. So what do project parameters do? These are in a single project file, but you can apply them to multiple categories. So for instance, you can have a who supplies an item, such, owner or contractor. That can be a project parameter that you apply to your generic models, your specialty equipment, and your casework, for instance. Or you could pick all the categories if you wanted to, although I wouldn't suggest that. You wanted to pick and choose based on what your parameter is doing. And you'll notice that it says it cannot be shared with other projects. What that means is that if you're linking projects, you're not going to get this information crossing, but you can transfer them with transfer project standards. So to create a project parameter, you would go into the Manage tab, Project Parameters, and Add when that pop-up comes up. And it follows the anatomy that we just went over. You've got all those 8 categories to fill in. And once you've done that, you can define the categories. And let me go back one. Once you've defined your project parameter, you want to make sure that you have chosen. Can't I change the? I won't be able to use a laser pointer here. Your name, you can go back and edit later, but your discipline type of parameter, you cannot. And whether it's a type or an instance, I believe you can change that. You can't change that afterwards. So you can change where it will be grouped, and you can change the name and the tooltip description, and you can change the categories that it applies to after the fact. But if you decide, oh, I don't want it to be a length parameter, I want it to be a text parameter, you're going to have to remake that parameter later. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're making these, and make sure that you're thinking ahead as much as you can. So what would you use project parameters for? Something like a system family that you can't edit in the family editor. So walls, floors, ceilings, those things you can't add parameters to by opening them up like you would in the family editor. You can add things such as, let's say you wanted to add more firewall information to your walls. Maybe you want to add a UL number that you have across the board, and you want to be able to put in what it is and schedule that, and it just show up in your wall schedule. So that's one instance. Another would be anything for views and sheets. If you wanted to order them in a certain way in your project browser, or if you wanted to use that to sort your drawing index, that's a good way to do that. Also, rooms, areas, spaces, again, going back to those system families, things that you can't open up and edit, you're going to want to add that as a project parameter. So code information, for instance, anything that you would want to add in that can be used as in a formula for figuring out your occupancy or your egress widths, all that you could build in. And then shared parameters are also something that you could add in, which is a little confusing, but in order to apply a shared parameter to a family that is in your project that doesn't have that shared parameter built in, you can add it as a project parameter, and then you can use that on those families. So let's say you have doors that are in your library that are standard, and they have all these shared parameters built in, what your hardware sets are, what the head, sill, and jamb details are. You can build those in when you're making the family, but if you're downloading something, say you go to JELD-WIN and download their door, it's not going to have those shared parameters in it. So in order to get your schedule to work, in order to be able to edit those parameters for that downloaded door, you can add those as project parameters, and then you have that ability. Also adding parameters across multiple categories. So if you have, for instance, like I said earlier, the owner furnished, contractor furnished, owner installed, contractor installed, you can define those across many categories and use that to schedule those, use it to filter them, whatever it is you need to do. Just it gives you that that flexibility to add in other things. Which you can kind of determine if you want to use it or not, is using key schedules as a way to create lists. So perhaps you have an abbreviation schedule, or you just have it as text in your drawings right now. You can pick a category that you don't use very often, or you know is not going to be used on the project, such as property line segments, and create a key schedule for that. Once you've done that, you can create other parameters within that schedule that you can define. So the abbreviation term versus the abbreviation. So you've got where that term is, and then what that abbreviation is for, and then the key name just gives you what it's under. So A's, B's, C's. And these parameters that you add into a key schedule automatically become project parameters. So that's something to note too, that even if you don't use this as as something you want to do, it's kind of on the iffy side of if you should use it. If you are using key schedules in their intended use, anything that you add as a parameter in those key schedules becomes a project parameter. So if you needed to remove those later, that's where you would go to remove them or alter them. And that's the extent of my presentation today. We wanted to leave plenty of time for questions, and another presenter that wanted to have some things to say. Oop, there you go. So I did want to cover that we have a few different social media platforms going. We do have a YouTube channel that you can watch past presentations. And there's also the LinkedIn page, and we also have a, sorry, I'm blanking on the name of it now, a Slack channel. I keep wanting to say Switch, and that's definitely not what it is, Slack, a Slack channel that you can go join and just ask questions there, connect with other people that are in the group, give ideas for what you'd like to see us give presentations on. And like I said, we're gonna send out this presentation in PDF format, so you can click the links to all of these as well. Okay, so I'm gonna open it up to questions. I don't see anything in the chat right now, and I don't think we have a question and answer panel, correct, Ann?
No, we don't.
Okay, cool. So if you want to send anything in the chat, or if you would like to talk, you can do that as well. And I can do a demonstration as well, if that's something you guys would love to see. Quiet group today. Is there anything that I went too quickly over that you'd like me to go over again or explain in more detail?
Did somebody ask a question? You were very faint.
Doesn't sound like it.
Okay. Okay, Beth, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Don't think so. There aren't any questions. Let's see. Is there any interest in me going through it live, how to do that, or did it pretty much cover what you guys were wondering about?
Do you mind going through it live one time?
No, not at all.
Yeah, it was a very efficient summary, so a lot of information
Well,
to kind of digest in much less
Yeah.
time than I think you had allotted, but fantastic job.
I went through it a bit quicker than I anticipated. Let me.
It's been a couple years since I've actually walked through these. That's why I was asking.
Yep, I get that. Not a problem. Let me open up a file that I can do that with. You should be seeing my Revit window now. So the project parameters button under the Manage tab is where you're going to find anything that already exists as a project parameter. And if you were to go in and just modify one, try to look at one, you'll see that, for lack of a better term, anatomy that I was talking about. You can see how some of the stuff is editable and some of it isn't after the fact. That's what I was trying to describe. I suppose I should have done maybe a live bit for that. And then, you know, what categories are selected, you can go back and edit those as well. So adding one is pretty simple. It's just picking the add button and then deciding whether this is going to be a project parameter or a shared parameter. If you're selecting one that you already have made as a project parameter, or I'm sorry, as a shared parameter, then it's fairly easy to select that. If you have to go in and create a new one, you'd have to edit and create a new parameter like you would under the shared parameter button over here. But if you're just creating a project parameter flat out, it's something that you can schedule, but obviously it says here, not in tags. You can't use a tag to show what that parameter says, but it's something you can show in schedules. So let's just say, and pick whatever discipline you want, pick your parameter type, just go with text, and pick a few things. Let's say casework, Energy equipment, generic, and furniture, let's say. And once you've done that, you can either edit or edit your tooltip or not. You don't have to. But I found this actually fairly useful, even for just for me to remember certain things about a parameter that I've created. Maybe there's a specific reason you needed it, or something about the project, whatever it might be. And then another thing that you want to keep in mind, these type and instance here. If you're defining whether it's by instance, that's pretty simple. It's going to show up in your properties palette. By type, it's going to be added to the edit type menu, or within the edit type menu. But it will change a little bit. You'll see this list, the categories over on the side change slightly between when I pick instance and when I pick type. There are certain things that you can only pick instance for, such as your analytical elements, which if you're not doing structural probably isn't important to you. But still something to keep in mind. If you don't see something over here that you think should be there, make sure to try testing, changing that. And then these values align per group type or instance. That is, think of that as, you have a group of, say, a residential interior for a multifamily. If it's going to be every group gets the same value, you want to check per group type. If every group might be different, then you're going to do instance. So it's the same thing as type and instance, just applying to groups specifically, and that's independent of this. You can only pick it if it's instance, but it'll still give you that granularity within groups. So then you hit OK, and it becomes one of your project parameters. Now, if I were to go, like I said, go back and try to modify, you can't change these two parameters, and you can't change what kind of type it is, but it exists now in there. If I were to go in and place, let's see, something like this, and go down to text, you'll see it right there. I can put in anything I want. And that'll be your new parameter. Now, if you go out and back into your project parameters and you remove this, it will give you this warning that all the data is going to be deleted if you remove that. So be careful removing parameters if you don't know what they're doing. And this, you'll also get this warning, I believe, if you go into, yes, if you uncheck one of the categories, it'll say you're going to remove that data as well. So it will warn you. So don't worry if you accidentally uncheck something. It'll say you're doing something you probably shouldn't. So keep that in mind as well. But you can remove these. You can say, I don't want this anymore. It shouldn't be there. It's an old parameter based on old standards or something. And it'll just disappear out of here, out of your schedules, anywhere you've put information, it'll be gone. Any questions about that? Any question about the uses or thoughts about those? Does anyone use them differently than the way I put it out there? Any general questions about parameters? Just anything that you don't understand about how they work or where to put them in? Okay, radio silence. Good. Maybe I was too efficient.
I would ask maybe what third-party solutions you have as far as helping to control parameters of the different types. They can, especially if you're getting stuff downloaded from like BIM objects or Revit City or some other sources that aren't company standards. How would you get them to a company standard?
Yeah, so there's there's a lot of tools out there, and a lot of, like you said, third party. And I haven't done, let's see, there's a few things that I've used that I find pretty helpful. There is a, just go into edit family. So if you open a family in the family editor and you have CTC software, and actually this isn't even something that you have to have a subscription to their service for, because they do have these free tools that you can use regardless of whether you have a subscription. So you can download the 14-day trial, and then these other darker tools will go away. They'll just become grayed out, but you can still use the free tools. So there are, within that, this family tools setup that you can go in and define, okay, here's a shared parameter that's in here. This isn't a good example because it's a clean model that we have internally, but you can say, I want to take the shared parameters that they have in there and put them in my shared parameter file so that I can just use them, or I can change one to another. So I can change their shared parameters to the ones that are our standards. And you can go in and just edit those by using this tool. Another one is, let's see, I think under PyRevit, there's a tool as well. I'm trying to remember where it lives. If you haven't tried out PyRevit, I would suggest utilizing it and looking it up. There's a lot of tutorials on how to utilize different things. And it's dense, like there's a lot of stuff in here. So it's always a little difficult to find exactly what you're using or looking for unless you've used it a lot. Let's see. So one thing you can do, which you be careful with, is wiping family parameters if you want to just go in and add your own. But I think, where is it? Maybe it's not in here. Maybe it was a different one. For those of you that have Imagineit as your retailer, reseller, they have their own set of utilities that they've developed. And some of these, I believe, also have some parameter tools. So parameter copy, shared parameter check. You can go in and see.
DieRoots has another family revisor.
Yeah. Yes.
And there's also a parameter manager, paramanager as well. I've not used those extensively, but.
Yeah. A lot of what I do is finding families that are close to what we need, stripping them out and starting pretty much from scratch, or if not completely from scratch, because the amount of parameters some of these have. So I haven't really delved into replacing them instead of editing. But yeah, you can come in with the DI roots, and yeah, like you said, I know it's here, but I really haven't used it a lot. But it's good to know that you can come in and say, okay, I can just see all my parameters and what all their elements are. It's actually a great way to just edit where, if you need to go in and say, oh, I need to change this, and this to instance, it'd be quicker to go in and do this than go into the family editor, open each of those, change them to instance. That would take a lot longer. So yeah, that's actually a pretty handy tool right there. What was the other one that I was thinking of? But parameter geometer under, I don't think I call it that. It's parameter copy. The Imagineit tools have a parameter copy tool where if you have a parameter that you can't schedule that parameter, for instance, areas of filled regions, you can't, for some reason, you can't schedule those. But you can, it is a parameter that exists in Revit. Like it's an information that exists there. So if you were to go in and just create a filled region, you'll see that there's an area associated with that. And maybe you want to use that to do some preliminary studies or figure out your roof areas for drainage or venting, something along those lines, something that you're only going to have in one view. It's going to be an annotation, but you want that area. You can use the parameter copy, and you'll actually, under my project parameters here, I have area copy. That is specifically for that use. So you can go in and say, I need to figure out what my elevation to glass ratio is for, we're really close on the code. You can only have this much glazing for being this close to the property line. So I can say, okay, here's my whole side of my building. And, here's my glazing. This is very simplified, but I could compare those, pull those into a schedule, copy those parameters over, and get that ratio right off of information on the view. So I found that to be pretty handy for those parameters that aren't quite there yet, that they haven't allowed us to schedule for some reason, or that aren't shared parameters that you can tag. You can use that parameter copy. And I think it's called Parameter Jammer if you're using ID8 software. I think they have the same tool in their suite that they've called that.
It's in the middle of the paid ones in the green.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is a CTC software. I know they have one in the ID8 too, but I don't have those downloaded right now. So yeah, very similar thing here. You can say, you can tell it, this one is actually, okay, so actually this is a slightly different what it does. So, and I think ID8 has something similar to this as well. So what you're doing here is you're saying, I have a parameter in this schedule, and I want it to be in these families because it doesn't have them right now. You can go and tell it, make sure you have it in the correct, looking at your correct shared parameter file. So the first time you set this up, you'll need to, don't die on me. Cancel. Let's try this again. And okay, so say you have something in your door schedule that's a shared parameter, and you need to put it in doors that aren't. This would be another way of getting around downloaded families not having what you need in them. Oops.
So that
you
tool
just have
basically,
it.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
So that tool basically takes your company standard parameters and pushes them into families that may have come from a different source or whatnot.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So it's like I said, with the project parameters, you can just add it in there, and you don't have to technically add it into the families. But if you wanted to bypass that and kind of pare down how many project parameters you were dealing with, this would be another way of doing that. But like you saw, it was a part of the paid subscription. So
yep, these utilities are fabulous because they allow you to see all of the families at once and edit them at once instead of doing each one individually, which obviously would take a massive amount of time.
right. Yep. Yeah, and the it's also true for, let's see if I can do the family processor and the Imaginet utilities is actually pretty nice as well. You have to be in a family on like the CTC software. It looked like you could do that within the project. For this, you can be, I'm not connected to my VPN, so it's yelling at me because I don't have my license.
Okay, well, Beth, I thought you had time constraints, so it's almost 11 or 12:50 now. So I think we could certainly go on third-party utilities to
Yes.
govern parameters for easily another 20 minutes at least. But
Right.
but I did want to, if anybody noticed, we have a couple guests with us. So Vaughn Lewis is a vendor with ATG out of Pittsburgh. He's our local rep. But they're also a vendor for BIMbox, which are custom configured computers specifically to handle the challenges of BIM. And so we've got Buck Davis with us also. And he wanted to share some information about BIMbox, his company, and there's a pretty good market for the types of machines that he builds. So if we can...
Yeah, Eric, I appreciate it, and I'll try to approach it with the brevity of Beth, and I appreciate it. I was certified in Revit in 2011, but it's been about 4 years since I was actively practicing in the industry, so I was kind of mesmerized by it, all the different tools. I'm familiar with PyRevit and Asana over there, and a lot of the different software, so it's always nice to get a refresher course. My parents are residential builders, so I still do some design work for them, but nothing really getting deep into schedules. So I'm going to go on and kick this off real quick. Let me make sure I got my presentation up. Are y'all able to see the screen, or let me see what y'all are looking at? Sorry. What am I sharing right now?
Right now, I just see a B for Buck.
Okay, so no screen. This is great.
And does he have permissions?
Sharing. This is Buck.
Here, let me pull this up real quick.
There you go.
There we go. So let me kick this off. Are y'all able to see my screen?
Yes.
So I am Buck Davis. I am the Director of Product Development at BIMbox. I was a Senior Digital Practice Manager at Balfour Beatty Construction. I've also worked as a BIM Manager doing high-end custom residential design, and I was also a Civil Project Manager. So I've done a lot of different things in the industry before getting started with BIMbox. 2015, founded BIMbox with a couple of AEC compadres. They were working in anything from VDC managers at large concrete contractors to MEP designers. We were working in the industry. We had a lot of issues and struggles with hardware, ranging from long loading times in Revit to just Navisworks issues to real-time rendering and virtual reality when it came out, having system compatibility issues. None of the dual Xeon systems and Quadro graphics cards we had could actually do virtual reality. So we started building our own systems for our own use and our project teams. The second systems we built after building CAD and Revit systems were for laser scan registration. We didn't set out to start a company. But when we looked at Dell and HP and some of the other manufacturers that were offering workstations and laptops for the industry, they just didn't have the specifications that we were looking for. We approach things understanding that your time is the most valuable resource. And in the AEC industry, there is just never enough time. So our goal is to provide the best tools for professionals. Just wanted to show this slide. I always like to. This is 2015 BIM box. The slide top picture on the left, this is one of the founders, my good buddy. His second bathroom, his wife was on the verge of killing him. We started getting so busy. His shower was full of computer parts. This is one of our founders actually laying down at one of the trade shows, running a coordination meeting. We were all still working full time. And then one of our original test benches we were building on. So that's 2015. This is where we are in 2020. We have grown dramatically. We partner now with a $48 billion hardware company, Ingram Micro. We have 30 engineers, 25 different build stations. Our computers are built in a dust-free, anti-static environment. Ingram Micro is the largest importer and system integrator in North America and across the world. They build and warrant our systems. So we give them the recipe, and this is our partner on that side. So we've grown rapidly, and we are no longer in a garage. I'll just throw that out there. One of the things we've always known is that as we grew to be able to provide systems to this market does not like custom build. They don't like one-up systems. So we had to grow to be like a Dell or HP to be able to provide consistent product, to provide enterprise level support. So here are a list of some of our clients, large general contractors. We got architects on here, big owners, big mechanical contractors. That is primarily who we are. You'll also notice we have quite a few software companies, Enscape, Leica, Faro, as well as some big owners. Facebook actually reached out to us. They're having issues with some of their virtual reality, and we partnered with them. So these are some of our clients that we support. This is one of our systems, so I'm gonna try to get through this pretty quick. Hopefully we'll be able to do a follow-up presentation a little bit more in depth. This is our primary desktop. This is our Striker 2 workstation. This is what we make for architects and designers. It's 8 core, 16 threads, but the really important thing about this were AutoCAD, Revit, and the visualization products, Lumion, Enscape, that makes it so important is it's the fastest system available. And not just that it's the fastest system, but we do some things, I'm gonna show you that in the next slide, that make it go fast on all the cores. A lot of computers have a boost speed or a turbo speed, meaning one core goes fast. The problem is architects and other designers typically are using 4 or 5 programs at once. You're using Revit, you might be using Bluebeam, you might be using Outlook, you might be using something else, right? An Enscape or something else. So by modifying our Intel processors and using our custom cooling solution, we're able to make all the cores go 5.2, which is beyond the boost speed, all day long. And that's through our direct die process. When you see that picture on the top right, this is a modified Intel processor. We've actually removed the heatsink that Intel puts on it. We mount our coolers directly to the die. We get a 40% reduction in cooling on that in temperature. So our processor can run beyond the boost temperature, beyond the boost speed all day long, which brings massive efficiencies to the workflow. This is our Osprey. If you use V-Ray or any post-process rendering, this is going to be the system for you. Up to 64 cores. If you're using post-process rendering, this is the system that you would be running. Additionally, we do offer laptops. So we do have a 15-inch and a 17-inch slim laptop. On the GPU side, and this is kind of the difference, we get a lot of people that come to us that have been using an Alienware or an MSI gaming system. And one of the things that they kind of notice when they switch to us is we use what's known as a non-Max-Q graphics card. A lot of the gaming systems and other laptops use what's known as a Max-Q card. And the difference between a gaming and a professional laptop, gaming laptops are made for battery consumption to where you're not plugged into a wall. That means they take your graphics card, they underclock it, make it go slower, so that if you're not plugged in, you get a lot of performance and your battery doesn't die in 5 minutes. Our clients, we expect them to be able to plug their computer in to get more power. So our graphics cards get a lot more performance. The other thing is we use the fastest solid state drives, so your files open up really fast, and we use a high speed RAM. So everything that happens in Revit happens snappy. Couple different things. So through our direct die process, this is a great example. We worked with Clark Construction in partnership with them to create a Revit benchmark. They were looking at about 5 different systems. They ran a custom benchmark for about an hour or 2 hours. And with the exact same hardware, our system was 39% faster than one of our competitors, which is a big time save when they were looking at 20 VDC members. So this is just pointing out with the exact same specifications, we were able to get a lot more performance in Revit. Other thing that you might not know, and this is something I always like to throw out to people in the architecture space, is BIM 360 design, which is traditionally been known as a cloud product. When you actually sync with the cloud, the comparison when you're checking what's changed with a local file happens inside of Revit, and that's all single core. So only one core on your computer is doing that comparison. So it all comes down to how fast that core is running. Our Striker workstation and laptops have the fastest processing speed possible, which really reduces that time. Faith Technologies is a $1 billion designer. They picked up a big project. Their BIM 360 sync times went from 15 minutes to 45 minutes. They saw that as $107,000 in wasted time. People were just sitting there waiting for files to open. We were able to cut that down to about 4 minutes for them. So there's a lot of time in the day that we see people just waiting for things to happen on their computer. And that's really what we try to target, right? We try to save you more time. And I know that workstations and laptops don't really seem sexy. And I know they're not, but we always like to point out that it's the only easy button that you can get. You get it, you download the exact same software, and you just use it, and you get better productivity. So this is a really, really quick presentation. It looks like I was right under 10 minutes. I'll open up for any questions, and I would just tell you, if you're having issues with long load times, your bad graphics in Lumion or Inkscape, or you just have a question about something, even if you just bought a computer and you say, hey, it's running slow, and is there anything I could do to make it faster? I'll tell you, everybody at BIMbox, from all the people that work for us to just anybody that's ever had one, if you talk to them, will tell you that our mission and statement is to make AEC technicians have a better experience. One thing about us, we offer a full 3-year warranty, and we also provide support for both hardware, Windows, and Autodesk products. So if you're having issues with Revit, you can call us. If you're having issues with an install, you can call us, and we support all those things. So I'm going to open it up for questions, but also if you have any concerns or questions, reach out to us, and we're happy to help you. I know that was pretty quick.
Thank you, Buck. Anybody that follows the Revit Kid, Jeff Pinero, BIMbox is a sponsor of that BIM After Dark Live on YouTube, where he does the weekly presentations. You see Jeff put it through some big paces with large site products that he's rendering in real time, and Enscape and Twinmotion and everything else. And so, if you do laser scans and registering point clouds, these systems are able to handle it better than anything else out there that try to cover all the bases for lots of different client types. So they are specific to BIM, and that's why they perform very well.
Yeah, Eric, one last thing. If y'all follow, or if you know Joseph Kim, he's an architect as well. He is doing a detailed review of one of our systems, and he'll be releasing like a 20-minute just about kind of talking about performance differences and pointing out some stuff and doing benchmarks. So he'll be talking about that. But I tell you, a lot of people look at high performance systems as like, hey, this is for the one person with Lumion. We look at it as if you do production work 5 to 8 hours a day, that's what this system is for. It's not just for a visualization person. So that's the quick gist of this. But if you have any questions, reach out to Vaughn or myself. I'm Buck at bimboxusa.com, and Vaughn is vlewis at atgusa.com.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. And Beth, great presentation. Yeah, I appreciate the refresher.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you to Beth for the great presentation on project parameters. And Buck, thank you for spending some time with us to introduce us to BIMbox. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And if there are no further questions, then I'll call it a meeting and see you next time in May. Or I'm sorry, yes, May 11th is our next meeting, and hopefully in the next few weeks we'll be posting what that next month's topic is. And if anyone's interested in a certain topic they'd like us to present, please let us know. Or if you're interested in being a presenter, please let us know. Otherwise, have a wonderful day, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks.